It seems like everybody who has handled this Siege of Mega Supreme, everyone who's reviewed it, everybody who has an opinion about it, loves this figure and says it's a great figure. I'm going to agree that it is a good figure. But today I want to talk to you about Hasbro's handling of this figure, issues surrounding this figure, how Hasbro could have made this good figure a great figure, and more importantly, future releases. We're going to talk about this coming up. So earlier this year when I saw Siege of Mega Supreme at Toy Fair, I was kind of blown away. I was like, this is a mainline figure. This figure looks good. I'm excited about it. I really like the way it looks. And I like the Titan class line. I think that those figures were getting bigger, figures that look pretty good. They're really G1, and in this case, G1-esque, and better than anything else we've got. Now, we got this Year of the Snake back in the day, and I passed on it because, well, it wasn't G1 enough for me, which I know I get a lot of flack for liking G1 a lot, but in the end, that's, I think, 60 to 70% of the market. And this Year of the Snake figure didn't do it for me. I knew there'd be a better one down the road, or hoped there'd be a better one down the road. And for those who like this Year of the Snake figure, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't for my collection. So when Hasbro announced and showed this figure off, I was excited about it. But then they started doing some strange things. They did announce that they were redesigning the hip ratchets. But now look at these pictures here. On the left, you have what they actually gave us, the promo pics that are now out for this figure. And on the right, you have the prototype. Now, look at the hips, and looking at those hips, the prototype looks better. The overall figure looks more in line with the character and the way it should look. And then if you look at what they gave us, it looks a bit off. Now, I'm not here to bash this figure, that all the people saying that it's a great figure are actually correct. But what this could have been, it could have been what they promised in the first place, from the get-go. And I do know Trypticon had some issues with the ratchets and internally destroying the ratchet the way they had it designed. I don't want to see that happen with this figure at all. And so I can understand, yes, they needed to redesign it, but why could they not maintain the aesthetic? At least the aesthetic that they began with. My next issue is how they're talking about this being a 24-inch figure, and I don't have my tape measure. I don't have one in hand to measure anyway. But my consensus is the figure ended up being closer to 20 inches. And the reason for that is because, well, it's definitely not a 2-foot tall figure. Now they're measuring to the top of the kibble, but even at the top of the kibble, it doesn't appear to be 24 inches. And here's the measuring stick for that. Here's a picture of it next to a 24-inch figure, next to Hasbro's other Titan. And Fortress Maximus is a 2-foot figure. And you see the wings get up pretty close to the top there, not all the way. And so head to head, this is definitely not a 2-foot figure in my opinion. Now, a lot of people from the get-go were thinking it would be about the size of a Citybot. But, okay, so this is actually a good point. It's the size of Devastator, or scaled to go up against Devastator and look right next to their Devastator. And so I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with that. But from the get-go, they kept talking about it being 24 inches. And I don't exactly think it's 24 inches. Now, I can't measure the tip of the wing, and that's not how I measure things, but of course, that's the way Hasbro measures it. Hasbro measures it to the top, the utmost top of the kibble that they can find. That's how tall a figure is. But to me, it's where the head is, because head to head, that's where you're gonna put your figures up head to head. They're not gonna be kibble to kibble, right? So why does size even matter? Like, okay, it's not really 24 inches head to head. Why does it matter? Well, a lot of collectors were talking about putting this as the masterpiece on their third-party masterpiece scale, their masterpiece scale, whatever, but as their masterpiece scale figure. Which, by the way, if you still do this and display this as your masterpiece, I don't have an issue with that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. Not that there's anything wrong with it. But here's the thing. A lot of people were expecting it to be the size of the third-party offerings. Now, it's not. It's smaller than the third-party offerings, and it's mainline, and it scales better. I mean, I could understand it scaling with the mainline better by being a little bit smaller. I understand that. But the major consensus was it was going to be on par. In fact, I had a lot of comments saying it's going to be taller. It's 24 inches, so it's going to be taller than the 23-inch DX9 or the Wii Zhang or even the fans' toys. Here we are. Now, it doesn't really scale as well as the other third-party options, and that is an issue. And yes, I know it's still supposed to be a chug. It's still supposed to scale with chug. And so a lot of people trying to stretch from a chug scale to the masterpiece scale, it is a bit of a stretch. A lot of masterpiece collectors use the Titan class figures as fill-ins for large figures such as the City Bots, such as the Triptychon, and all of those. And the fact that we don't have masterpiece representations, the fact that masterpiece representations are probably going to be way too big for the average collector. So the Titan class is a perfect example of something that will fit for a masterpiece collector to have in their collection, and also budget enough for mainline collectors. And when you look at this and you see this of a unique situation with the Omega Supreme, and here's why. You don't have a Metroplex in the masterpiece scale that's made yet. Now, we have a 4-Max coming in who knows how many years it'll take, or if it'll ever even see light of day, but the Fans Toys version that's going to be 47 inches or something tall, and a grand maybe. So picking these figures up. But when it comes to pricing structure, let's look at this, because these figures that are considered chug, but masterpiece collectors display them in their collection, let's look at this price. So Metroplex came out for $125, and a lot of places had them on sale for $100 here and there, and that price was pretty good for what you were getting, and at the time, largest figure ever made. Okay, largest made by Hasbro. And still to this date, there's not a third-party figure bigger than this for Metroplex. And yes, this Metroplex doesn't look super G1. It could look more G1. They could do better or a more G1 representation. I doubt they will, but they could. Then we got the Combiner Wars Devastator, which looks good. I mean, I still think that it's a good looking figure. It made a lot of compromises, whatever. But it was $140. So we went from 125, went to 140. But for 140, we got it a lot smaller than what we got with the Metroplex. But you have 6 transforming robots, so more engineering, allegedly, is the reason why it was more expensive. So we saw the Titan class bump up to 140. Then you see the Titan class bump up to 150 with the redesign, remold of Metroplex into this Fortress Maximus. And the 150 price point, I think, was a turnoff to many people. They just didn't want to spend the 150 on it. And subsequently, this is the figure that kind of ushered in the discount chains getting this guy for between 40 and 60 bucks. And by the way, you can't find it at a discount chain right now for 40 or 60 bucks. All you're going to hear online is everyone talking about how this thing was 40 or 60 bucks. But the time has come and the time has gone for this figure to be a $40 to $60 figure. It's worked its way through the system. Just like Triptychon and all those other figures have worked their way through the system. Now the only one left in the system is Omega Supreme. So now all the Titans are at 160. But this figure has third-party competition. Third-party competition that is actually competition at the price point. When you look at this and you say, okay, so the Wii Zhang was selling about $200, $215 on the left there, and on the right you have the DX9 Gabriel, which was selling for about $235 that I paid for mine. But you can get this figure right now for about $180. So yeah, BBTS has it for $180 on sale. Now, so it shows MSRP of $279. Oh, unless you buy this guy right now on sale. But as of right now, if you're looking at this figure, you're saying there are options. There are other options for about this size of a figure that exist out there other than what they just made. And this has nothing to do with the Unicron situation where Zeta came in and tried to undercut what Hasbro was doing. These figures have been around long before Hasbro even said they had a Siege one coming along. So now we even saw the Omega Supreme showing up for 20 bucks at a warehouse sale, which I don't have a whole lot of information about that and why they did that, but starts to make me think one of two things. Either they don't want it to hit the discounters, or this might be the most heavily discounted figure, because I never heard of a Titan hitting 20 anywhere, ever, whatsoever. And maybe this is their way of keeping it out of the discounters for 40 or 60, but I don't know. Maybe we'll see it with the discounters even cheaper. Who knows? But that's kind of concerning to me, and it's kind of another one of those things like, why is Hasbro handling it like this? Now, the next thing that bothers me isn't really specific to the Omega Supreme, but it's the Titan class line altogether, how they took out the electronics. And the first and the first and the third release, I guess you could say, have the electronics in them. Fortress Maximus and Metroplex have electronics in them, and I think that's a fun gimmick to have. But the thing is, if you're pulling out the electronics, which on a mass-produced scale don't add that much cost, but you pull out the electronics on these things, the cost should be coming down. But the cost is just rising since they made these figures. They're giving us a little bit less with them, and I start to wonder, like, we're not going to see electronics in future Titan class releases, and they're getting smaller. So bear that in mind when I get to the end here. And my last point that's going to be really specific to this figure is they just did not make the alt mode look right. It's too small, or it's not too small as in too short, it's too small as in it's more of a circle instead of an oval. The classic design had it as an oval, and we are going to get upgrade kits for this. We have to spend another 35 bucks or something to get upgrade kits to make your alt mode look correct. And they knew it from the get-go. I know for a fact that they know for a fact that this didn't look right, but they put it out anyway. Now, of course, Hasbro never gave any reason why it looks like this, why it's so short, why it's so narrow, I guess you could say. But I have to think that they just, saved another 42 cents a figure, and they're cutting every cost they can. So where is all this leading? This is all leading to what's the future of the Titan line? What can we expect with Scorponok? And will Scorponok be the last Titan? Very possibly. And my concerns are this. First off, I hope it stays the 160 price point. I know a lot of collectors are excited and looking forward to a Scorponok, myself one. But with all of this, will Scorponok be too small? Will they make him the same size as Omega Supreme? Or are they going to make him the size of the City Bots like he should be? What are they going to do with this guy? Now, I've seen some funny pictures where people have turned their Omega Supreme into what could be a redesigned Scorponok Scorpion mode, which is kind of funny, but then again, that's collectors looking to the future and what they're expecting out of Hasbro. I want this Scorponok to be the size of the City Bots. It only makes sense. What is going to get skimped on to hit the price point of 160? Or maybe they're targeting a price point of 60, and I am concerned about future releases here. We've seen pictures of the head. We know that the Scorponok is going to be a headmaster, and it's going to be a true headmaster. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to what they could do with it. But on the flip side, are they going to skimp on this guy? Is it going to underwhelm? We'll know here in a few weeks. Well, longer than a few weeks, but probably 6 weeks at Toy Fair 2020. And more on Scorponok then. So what do you think about Hasbro's Siege Omega Supreme? Are you one of the ones that got it right away, really pleased with it, and really don't mind the alterations they made to it. You just think it's a great figure, a great toy for what it is. Are you one of the people that's waiting till you see it for 40 or 60 bucks to pick it up, and if you don't, you'll just pass? I'm just curious what everybody else thinks about this thing, because it's still a good figure in the end. With the problems and the issues, which are not that big of a deal, are still problems and issues. Are you like me, and if you bought it for 160, would just be kind of irritated seeing it showing up for 40 or 60 bucks? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, to Hanger out.